Thank you, Don. That was a great setup. I'll try not to fall short. How does this work? Okay, slideshow.
Yeah.
You can touch it, yep.
There we are. Okay. Again, my name is Karen Kreider, and I'm with the State Treasurer's Office. As I said, I'm the program manager for the South Carolina Able Savings Program, and the mother of this very unsmiling young man here. Matthew will not smile for the camera, which was taken the day of our launch event, which was last November. So thank y'all for inviting me here. I told Robin this was the first official invitation I had last fall. I had just joined the Treasurer's Office. I thought, oh, that's so far away, and here we are. So. Today, I thought I would cover real quickly what we're going to talk about. We'll go do a brief overview of the ABLE Act. We'll talk about eligibility and benefits. The enrollment process, we'll kind of zip through that. Talk about funding accounts, and then qualified as well as non-qualified expenses and even some more things. Okay, so how many of you are familiar, or even a little bit, with the ABLE Act? Okay, a lot. This is actually the most people I've seen, so I won't dwell on this a lot. But it was federally passed in 2014, and what this did was allow the creation, or amended the federal tax code to add section 529A, which allowed for the creation of tax-advantaged savings and investment accounts for individuals with disabilities. And the huge benefit is that it does not affect the eligibility for needs-based benefits programs, because this is something that did not exist before. The other thing it did was allow states to create and offer ABLE programs to their citizens. And so our program is administered by the State Treasurer's Office, which is the case in most ABLE programs around the country. We are partnered with the state of Ohio. Ohio was actually the first state to launch their ABLE program. They're kind of like the 800-pound gorilla. They have 12 states that participate in their state ABLE, or stable account program as they call it. And they manage about 30% of all ABLE assets nationally. I told Don earlier there are about 20,000 ABLE accounts open today nationally, and there is close to $100 million in assets. So Ohio is a very big player in this arena, and they've been very good for us to work with. And again, we launched in November. And today I can tell you we have 332, to be exact, ABLE accounts open in our state. The vast majority are right from up here in the upstate. We've had huge enrollment numbers from Greenville, Spartanburg, Pickens. Lawrence County has been huge, and I think a lot of that has come from our disability and special needs boards who have been really working with us and advocating and making these accounts available to their clients. And for that, we are very appreciative.
I think you can just touch the screen and
Oh,
move
anywhere?
forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is like much fancier than
No.
most of them. So now let's take a look at eligibility, and this is something that people are always interested in. First off, the way the Federal Act was written is that it's eligible for individuals with disabilities that occurred prior to the age 26. And you also must be a South Carolina resident to participate in the South Carolina State ABLE Savings Program. Now, people can join programs in other parts of the state if they wish. You know, people always ask me, well, should I stay in state or go out of state? That really is their decision. And I've sent a lot of people to the ABLE National Resource Center. They have actually a state comparison. You can look at the different programs, check the different fees, but everybody has to make their decision. Of course, we hope they'll stay in South Carolina. So in addition to the age requirement and the residency, they have to have one of the following. They need to be either eligible to receive Supplemental Security Income, SSI, or SSDI due to a disability, or they have to have a condition that's listed on the Social Security Administration's list of compassionate allowances, or they can self-certify, which we'll talk about on the next slide. So you don't have to receive government benefits to qualify, but if you do receive government benefits due to a disability and you meet the first two criteria, then you are eligible for an account. Now, self-certification, and I think we're seeing about 20% of the accounts in South Carolina are from people that are going through the self-certification process. What this means is that you are attesting that you have a diagnosis of either a physical or mental impairment that causes marked and severe functional limitations, which you may be familiar with the Social Security Administration's definition of disability. That's it. You also attest that the condition has lasted or is expected to last for at least a year. Now, the good thing about this is you don't send a written diagnosis into us. We don't want to have people's private health information. You just have to have a letter from your physician that was the name and the date of the diagnosis and your condition, and keep it on file at home in case you're ever audited, but we don't want you to send that in. So we are seeing a lot of people enrolling through the self-certification process. Now, what does this look like in terms of people? We thought we'd give you a few examples here. First, we have Susie. Susie was born with Down syndrome. She's 40 years old and receives SSI. Would she be eligible for an ABLE account?
Yes.
Yes, she would, because she was born with a congenital anomaly. She will always have this condition, so she is eligible. And then we have Tom, who unfortunately had a motorcycle accident 2 days after his 26th birthday. And Tom is now a quadriplegic and receives SSDI. Is Tom eligible? No, because he's over 26 by 2 days. He missed the age. It has to be prior to age 26, and he had it 2 days after his 26th birthday. Now, I can tell you that this is something that is being advocated for on a federal level to increase the age to 46. And if and when that happens, we'll be sure to share that information with everyone. But it's one of those things that has to go through the government channels and the budget of Congress and all that. So hopefully that will come into being, because I think it'll open the door for a lot more individuals. And then we have Mary. And Mary began having symptoms of a mental illness in her teens. She was diagnosed when she was 30 years old that she did have a functional and severe disability. Mary's now 50 years old, and she receives both SSI and Medicaid. Is she eligible for an account? Well, she can have the diagnosis, and she is eligible because her symptoms were onset prior to the age of 26. That's the condition. You don't have to have even a diagnosis before you're 26, as long as the symptoms were present. So she would be eligible for an account. And we actually do have a woman in Ohio who is over 60 years old with an ABLE account. And it just shows it works for all ages. And in South Carolina, the average age of an ABLE account owner is 40 years old. So we have a lot of adults in our program. Now we'll talk about the benefits of opening an ABLE account. And this young lady in the center, her name is Rachel Lewis. She's actually from Greenville. Do you know Rachel?
Everybody knows her.
Oh my
We
gosh.
know her.
What a breath of fresh air she was that day. She's just like a bubble. She's just charming. And we were thrilled to have her with us. Before the ABLE Act was approved, you could not have over $2,000 without risking those government benefits. And now with ABLE, you can save well over that, which is really huge. In fact, the ABLE Act was started by a group of parents who challenged this $2,000 resource limit because it wasn't fair. They couldn't take care of those children, they could take care of their others, but not the child that perhaps needed it the most. And in terms of some other benefits we have is the fact that it's the ownership of the account. And the account is owned by the individual with a disability. And I have spoken to people at other presentations, and this is like huge for them because it's the first time they can own something financial and actually start saving resources. And what this does is creates financial independence because it's providing people with new investment opportunities they've never had before. And then you also have the tax benefits. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I have a question in regards to it being owned by the individual with disability. If you have guardianship over that individual, are they still allowed to have that account?
Yes, yes, and we'll talk about who can enroll in an account, but yes, that definitely is the case. And these accounts have tax benefits. They're tax advantaged, which means that the earnings in the account are not taxed federally or on state level when those funds are used for qualified disability expenses, okay? And South Carolinians can deduct up to 100% of the contributions they make to an ABLE account from their South Carolina state income tax return. Even if they make a contribution to a program in another state, you still can recognize the tax benefit on your South Carolina state taxes. And the one point I don't have up here, which you kind of alluded to, is I think for me as a mother of an adult child who's going to always need care, is it gives me peace of mind knowing that I have wheels in motion to start building something up for his future and that he'll be protected. And that to me is more important than just about anything. And that's just from a parent. Okay, now there are some considerations with ABLE accounts. The first is the annual contribution limit is tied to the federal gift tax exclusion, and in 2018, it went up to $50,000. So over time, if this number increases, the annual contribution level will increase. And you're only allowed to have one ABLE account per beneficiary. Now, if someone has an ABLE account in another state, they can roll it into the South Carolina program. And when we go through the enrollment process, I'll show you where to do that. But it's only one account per person. In fact, Ohio actually had a woman ask if she could open an account in Ohio, and she could do one in Tennessee and one in Virginia. She apparently had lots of money and wanted to invest it, but the answer was no. Unfortunately, you can only have one account for the beneficiary. And there are considerations too in terms of supplemental security income, your SSI. Whereas before it was $2,000 for resolution benefits, with ABLE accounts, the ceiling for that is $100,000. And what would happen is when an account gets up to $100,000, the benefits for that individual would suspend. They're not terminated. They just won't receive their benefits again until the account balance drops below $100,000. Now, this hasn't been a factor yet because nobody, since these accounts are only a couple of years old, nobody has as much money in their ABLE accounts. But I know the Social Security Administration is working with the program administrators to have a program where the databases will bump once a month. And when an account is over $100,000, that will be flagged. The benefits for that individual will suspend. The next month, when they bump again, if it's dropped down, those benefits will resume. And the way I look at it is people have $98,000 more than they could have before, and that's a lot of money. And there are people who will only keep the accounts, I think, will deliberately keep them below $100,000, but that's everyone's choice on how they want to work with these programs. It gives you that flexibility. Now, the other consideration is if money is spent for a housing expenditure, if that's held over from one calendar month to the next, then that can count as a resource. So we always encourage people, if you're paying rent, you're making a mortgage payment, it's due May 30th, take the money out in May, pay it in May. Make sure you keep it within those parameters. And then finally, if a beneficiary contributes to their own account, those wages still count as income, even if they're contributed to an ABLE account. We like to say ABLE accounts are asset shields, but they're not wage shields. Your income is your income. Now, in terms of spending funds, the real beauty of these accounts is this was written very broadly in terms of the guidelines for it. And withdrawals really should be used on what we consider qualified disability expenses. And what this means is anything that relates to the disability and helps improve the health, independence, and quality of life for that individual. And what I may need in my family may be different than what they need. But you can use it on housing and rent, which includes mortgage payments, house insurance, home repairs, basic living expenses, food, groceries, clothing, transportation, including modifying a van, purchasing a van if you need special transportation, or using a service such as Lyft or Uber. Those are all qualified expenses. Education, whether it's going to college, getting tutoring, getting job training, anything like that would be covered. Assistive technology, financial management, health and wellness, legal fees. So if you were setting up a special needs trust, you could use your funds from an ABLE account to do that, or to maybe the financial planner to take care of the assets and plan for that individual. And really much more. I mean, you can use these funds to pay for a service dog, for the care and feeding of a service dog. So again, it's up to the individual. And I can tell you, yes, sir.
Just a question. So what couldn't
Yeah.
you purchase?
What you
I mean,
can't.
it seems like food would count, rent would count.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's very flexible. What you cannot do is gift the money. So you
Okay.
could not take money out of your account and give it to someone else. You really need to keep it focused on the individual with the disability. And there are some other things they don't
But really, once it's there and identified for that person, as long as it's related to their
care.
well-being,
Yes,
anything about
and
them,
quality of
it's
life.
quite fine.
Like
Okay,
you-
what about a trip?
A trip is covered. I was just going to say vacations are frequently asked because, people ask me, well, if you go on a vacation, how do you feel? Well, I feel great as long as I'm on vacation until reality hits Monday morning and you're back at work. But it's going to have the same benefit for that individual with a disability. Now, we tell people, don't go to a 5-star resort, but if you take someone on a vacation, if they need a caregiver, that would be qualified as a disability expense because that's for the care and well-being of that individual. And even respite care, if an individual has a full-time caregiver and that person needs a break, whether it's just for a few days or we go out shopping, the expenses associated with that would be a qualified disability expense because it's a service that's being provided for that individual. So this is very flexible.
And I would add, there are challenges on things like food and housing, taking that money out of a third-party special needs trust. So I say that because that is an example of how these can complement
Right.
each other. You probably would want to be taking housing, food out of the 529 ABLE and not out of the special needs trust.
Right. Yeah, and that is, in fact, we consider, you'll see on my slide, we consider them complementary tools. It's just one more resource for us to work with. And so for non-qualified expenses, there may be consequences. First off, it can affect your benefits because if somebody pulls money out of their ABLE account and then uses it on a non-qualified expense, that could be counted as a resource for them and affect their benefits, which we don't want to happen. That could be absolutely devastating to an individual. And there could be tax penalties, and I'll give you an example of that. You would pay taxes, it's 10% penalty on the earnings portion. If somebody puts $990 in their ABLE account, they earn $10 in interest. Next month, they pull out $1,000 and spend it on something that's a non-qualified expense. What they're going to have to do is pay taxes on that $10 plus a penalty on the $10 earning portion. So it's not huge, but it still is a tax penalty. The bigger risk, I think, is the affecting of the benefits because you don't want to create those. And another thing that really, I always say this though, I think this is kind of written here loosely. It's not good to spend money on things like online gaming, casinos, things like that. It's like, I want you to have fun, but not too much fun. So just kind of don't go down that path with your ABLE account. Because you can be audited. We'll never ask how you spend your money. We never will. Ohio won't. But the IRS can, Social Security can. So keep track of those records and just spend it away. You should just be a good guardian of those dollars. Now, in terms of enrollment, it can either be done by the individual with a disability, which is the beneficiary, as long as they have the capacity to do so, or it can be done by an authorized legal representative. And sometimes people have the capacity, but just don't want to deal with it. And that would be the case with my son. Could he have opened his own account? Yes. Does he want to manage it? No. Mom, you do it. So I do have durable financial power of attorney for my son, and medical POA as well,
There you go.
which is helpful. But it can be opened by an authorized legal representative, which could be a parent, a legal guardian, or someone with power of attorney. Now, we are frequently asked if rep payees can serve as authorized legal representatives. That's not written in the guidelines the way they're written. However, if an individual works for an organization and it's within their it's in keeping with their policies and procedures, they can have a limited power of attorney form that is specific to ABLE accounts, signed and notarized, and then yes, they can function as the authorized legal representative. And we do have a power of attorney form specific to ABLE that's available on our website on the resources tab. So, because I know this has been a huge issue, especially for a lot of the boards around the state, asking if they can do that. So as long as your organization leadership is fine with it, that works. Just get the POA signed. Enrollment is free if you do it online. It takes about 20 minutes. They actually have a video online of the woman in California with cerebral palsy. She opened her account with one finger in 20 minutes. Just make sure you have all the documents you need. And it requires just a $50 minimum deposit to open the account and fund it. Another important note is that you cannot open an account in a bank. I actually had a woman stop by our office who had been going from bank to bank downtown Columbia. She was a veteran who had had a head injury, and nobody knew what she was talking about until somebody just went, treasurer's office. She came over, I took her upstairs, and we sat down together and opened her account in a few minutes. So there is no bank front. This really is an online resource, an online tool for individuals. Now, I'm going to go through these next slides pretty quickly, but just to show you what our website is, it is scable.org. This is our home page. When you go to this site, you can either click open an account here or up there, and you'll come to a welcome page, which on this side, this little box says enroll now. So you click now to enroll. This laundry list slide tells you everything you need to have on hand to open your account, and this will be things like social security numbers, make sure you have banking numbers if you're gonna set it up for electronic funds transfers. It took me longer to figure out what my son's social security number was and what his banking routing number was because nobody has checks anymore. But once you have that, you're good to go. Then you'll start setting up your account. The individual needs to have an email address and set up the username. You'll have security questions. I mean, this is a financial tool, so this process is very much like setting yourself up for online banking. And then we want you to tell us about yourself and identify who you are and what your relationship is to the ABLE account beneficiary. Are you a person? Are you a parent? Are you a guardian? Do you have power of attorney? And then you input all of their information, the name, address, social security number, date of birth, just basic information. Uh-oh, what time is it? Uh-oh. Sorry, this is. I'm sorry. I'm having technical issues. Sorry about that. And then we'll talk about the basis of the eligibility. How is the individual qualified? Are they eligible to receive SSI or SSDI due to a disability? Do they have a condition on the Social Security Administration's list of capacity allowances? Are they self-certifying? If they self-certify, they'll get a couple more boxes to pop up, which will put the name of their doctor and what their date of diagnosis was. So for that, you will have a few more boxes. And then you put your disability type. We ask you if the condition is considered permanent. If it is, you won't be asked that same question again. And when you go to your next slide, which is your delivery options, tell us, do you want to get your paperwork electronically? Do you want to buy the mail? I think to get paper statements is about a $10 a year fee for that. If it's online, it's free. And then you tell us how you want to make your contributions. When you open an account, you can either on the spot do an electronic funds transfer, it takes $50, or you can send in a check, and they'll tell you at the end of the process, if you choose to send in a paper check, you'll get the information at the final screen. And also on this page, if somebody is rolling over an account from another state to South Carolina, this is where you would click that. And if anybody is in a situation where they're rolling over an account, I suggest you call our customer service team, and they'll be glad to help you and walk you through that process. You set up automatic recurring contributions as well, which makes it kind of easy. And then once you click, yes, you're ready to proceed, you've opened your ABLE account. And Mr. Fisher, I know, opened an account with his son, and it was a pretty easy process. So now, you've got your account open. Let's look at how you put money in your account. It's really pretty simple. First off, our 529A program is tied to our 529A college savings program. They have a lifetime contribution limit, which is currently $426,000. So that's the maximum lifetime contribution for an ABLE account, which is going to take a long time to get to, but that's what it is. And if our future scholar level goes up, number increases, ABLE will as well.
It's actually $500,000 now, I think. As of like last week or something like that.
Okay, well, it's $500,000. I've got to update my slide then. Okay, thank you, Kelly. If you're not employed, you can put in $15,000 a year from all sources combined. So it doesn't have to be just from the parents. You can get contributions from friends, neighbors, even employers, that's fine. But it has to be $15,000 max. And if you put $15,000 in, even if you spend $10,000, you can't put more money in your account. Once you've contributed $15,000 in a calendar year, that's it, until the next calendar year when you can add more money to your account. Now, if you're employed, this was a provision that was passed last December, the Able to Work Act. An individual that works can put, in addition to their $15,000, they can contribute another $12,060, which is the federal poverty level, into their ABLE account. There's some considerations with that. I think once you hit the $15,000, even if you have parents, friends, other family contributing, once you hit the $15,000 mark, the rest of those contributions have to come from the account owner or the beneficiary themselves. But it puts you up to a situation where you can potentially put $27,000 a year in your ABLE account. And our system is designed to automatically reject any kind of excess contributions. Now, how do you get money in? You can do it through electronic funds transfer, which is pretty easy today. Or, as I said, you can send in a paper check to the processing center. And then in terms of investment options, this is very much like a 401k account. So if you open an account like this, or you have your own, it's going to be very familiar to it. We have 4 Vanguard mutual funds to choose from that range from aggressive to more conservative accounts. And we have 1 FDIC insured bank safe account. You can put it all in one account, you can spread 20% in each of the 5, or mix it up however you wish. Nationally, what we're seeing, and in South Carolina as well, is almost everybody is putting all of their money in the bank safe fund. But that's the individual's choice. We do not give recommendations on how people should invest. That's up to either the account beneficiary or the authorized legal representative. And if people don't know what to do, we say talk to a financial planner.
And the reason people do this is they're using these more as savings accounts. You really don't want to invest aggressively money that you're potentially going to need to go get. And I think probably the other element of it is that people are starting out conservative. Let's see how these things work. You know, it's a new thing. But really, if you're going to be using that money and taking it out of the account, you don't want to put it in the stock market where if we have a bad run, you lose a big chunk of that. So.
And that's exactly it. And these accounts, I think, are being used very much for transactional purposes. So, thank you for saying that. That really helps. But that's it. Okay. Now, as with most financial accounts, there are some fees associated. There's a $3.50 monthly maintenance fee, which is $42 a year. And then there are some asset-based fees that range between 0.19 and 0.33%. And these are some of the lowest rates in the country. But again, you can check all this right on the ABLE NRC website because they have all the programs and what the fees are that they're charging. And I think, honestly, working with Ohio, one of the great appeals we had is that their fees were some of the lowest we've seen. Now, spending from your account, the advantage is that it's free. You don't pay anything to withdraw money. And there are no limits on how many times you can take a withdrawal in a given month. You can do it 3 different ways. You can transfer money to a personal checking or savings account, or you can have a third-party check written, which would be something you would do if you're paying rent every month. Just have that set up so it automatically goes from this bank to that bank. Or we have a stable card, which is a debit card that you can transfer money onto and use that to track your spending. And again, we're not going to ask how the funds are spent, but benefits agencies and the IRS can. So we just suggest that people, when they take money out, make sure you keep records of it. Now, this is the stable card. We actually are going to be having some changes to this card, and we'll have a new look for it probably by August. It's a loadable prepaid debit card. So you take money out of your stable account and you put it onto your debit card. Now, one of the advantages of this is that it doesn't pull money directly from your account. So if somebody's maybe a little freewheeling with their money, like I would not want my son to necessarily have full access to the money in his account, but if he has $300 loaded on it and he decides to go to Best Buy and spend $500, the purchase will simply be declined, which is a protection. It's not going to just pull the money out of his account. Also, with a stable card, it really helps track your expenses because you'll get notated reports, so you'll know exactly what you're spending your money on. You can't overdraft it. There is no cash access, so that's one important point. You can't go to an ATM machine and pull money out with your stable card. It will not allow that. And you can set it up so you get text notifications if your balance runs low. So, you know, some people use these all the time. I work with a gentleman in Charleston who has one with his daughter, and he's forever checking how much money they have in it. He uses it for as much as he can because it's easy to keep track of where the funds are going. Now, stable accounts and special needs trust, which was a great setup for this. We really do feel that these are complementary tools that can be used together. It's one more tool in our toolbox that we have to work with. One of the big advantages, trust can accept unlimited cash and non-cash assets, which you cannot do with ABLE accounts. With a $15,000 cap, if somebody comes into a large sum of money, they're in trouble. So that's why the trust will be done. And you can amend a trust or write one so that distributions can be made to an ABLE account. So if someone has need for more flexibility with their funds and they have easier access to it, you could have funds distributed from the trust to the ABLE account where they can use it for qualified disability expenses without having to go through a lot of effort. It makes it very simple for the account beneficiary. some of the benefits to stable accounts. It has a broader spending power, housing and food. You do get state tax deductions for contributions to your ABLE account. Again, no federal or state taxes are paid on the earnings, and they can be established, administered, and owned by the individual with a disability. And it only costs $50 to set up an ABLE account. So if someone doesn't have a lot of money, perhaps can't afford right now to set up a special needs trust, they can certainly do it with an ABLE account for a lot less money. And then when the time comes, as they start accumulating their assets, then they could use those funds to set up the trust and the planning for what comes next. So what does happen when the account holder passes away? First, the account will pass to the account holder's estate, and then that person will notify Stable and they can take over access to the account. It'll go through the normal South Carolina probate process, and there's no designated transfer on death. Now, you can transfer if a family has two individuals with disabilities, and this person passes away, those funds can be transferred to the other eligible individual so long as they have an ABLE account. So you can do that kind of transfer
Without having to do any kind of payback?
without having to do any kind of payback.
Okay.
And it's also, they, actually, this was passed too, it's, with the 529 accounts. If parents open a college savings fund for their child when they were small and then realize later that either due to a disability or a diagnosis or an accident, that child may not be able to go to college, they can roll the money from a 529 account into an ABLE account for that child. It has to be the same beneficiary, but they can only do it up to $15,000 a year or whatever the cap is. So if you have $45,000 a year, it will take you 3 years to transfer it over. And then when the money's in the ABLE account, even if that child decides to go to college or they're going to go to technical school or wherever, they can still use the money in the ABLE account for those purposes. It just gives them more flexibility with accessing those funds.
I would add a little bit to that because I kind of breezed over college education. Some people are scared to put, colleges have really good programs. There's 5 or 6 in South Carolina, but they are not cheap. So you can actually use these as complementary vehicles too, because you can put more money into a 529 plan. That child does not, some people are scared of that, but that child does not own a 529 plan. They're only the beneficiary. The parent owns the 529 plan, different than the 529 ABLE. So if you have a child that you think is going to go to one of these programs, like the Clemson program now has a 4-year program, and I think it's $30,000 plus a year. So if you save all of that in a 529 ABLE, you're going to wipe out your account if they end up going to college. So you can use these two as complementary. So don't be afraid if you feel like that child's going to go to college. You can use a 529 and a 529.
Right, and that's a great point. That's very, very true. Now for Medicaid, this is the tough one, and we're always asked about this. Medicaid, yes, they can ask for payback in some cases, but there are some protections with ABLE accounts. First off, Medicaid payback is only from the date that the ABLE account was opened. So if someone received benefits for 20 years, opened an ABLE account, passed away 2 years later, the payback would be for that 2-year period, okay? Also, before anything is taken, it can be used to pay any outstanding bills for qualified disability expenses, which includes funeral expenses and burial expenses. And if the individual paid any buy-in premiums for Medicaid, they can take that out first. So I think in many respects, it's better protected than in other types of accounts, but Medicaid payback does exist. Now, I do know that some states have put forward legislation that prohibits this from happening in their states, but it's not nationally, because this is a policy that was written by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, the CMS. This is their policy. So in South Carolina, my guess is if someone passes away, or when they do, they would be subject to this if they met the criteria. So, and that's one of those things that's unfortunately bigger than us. And we're here to help. We really are. We have a great customer service team that's available now Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. You can call them. They're always very responsive. I call them frequently when somebody asks me a question that I don't know the answer to see what I can find out. You can even email them and they will get back to you. If you have a fairly complex question or a legal question that perhaps they can't answer on the spot, Ohio does have a team of attorneys on retainer. They'll ask there and get the correct information back to you. So we really encourage, yes, sir?
Yeah, I had a question for the Able account. Would somebody with high functioning autism who's not getting SSI, would they be able to open up an Able
Yes.
account? I
Autism
thought maybe
spectrum.
it wouldn't meet that
Well, it is.
definition that they have.
No, autism is on the, it is definitely qualifying disability.
No matter where.
Yes,
Okay.
autism spectrum, yes.
Kind of related to that, my daughter is going, we're in the process of getting her disability. If she got an ABLE account, would that affect the disability at all?
No.
Okay.
No, ABLE accounts and both the Social Security Administration and the CMS have written their procedures and operations manuals, which we have posted on our website about this. With Medicaid, any balance, I mean, up to $426,000 or $500,000, wherever we are today, will not have any bearing on Medicaid approval. And with SSI, it's up to the first $100,000, which is going to take a few years to get to. But those do not count as resources. And even if you go over $100,000, it still won't have any bearing on your eligibility for an account. Okay? Yes, sir?
Would it have bearing if you were already in Medicaid services then? If you went over 100,000, would you need to pay
No,
until you paid it down?
no.
So it doesn't-
Not for Medicaid.
Not for Medicaid.
Medicaid does not have, there are no financial correlations with that. It has no bearing at all on your Medicaid benefits, regardless of your
So
account
it would
balance.
freeze Social Security, but it would not impact
Will not
the
impact.
responsibility to pay for Medicaid services?
No, sir, it will not. It has absolutely no, you can have the full $500,000 in your ABLE account, and you will not compromise your Medicaid benefits. So, anybody else have a question back there? Okay. This is always my Sally Fields moment. It's like, we really would appreciate it if y'all would help us spread the word. The treasurer has a Facebook page, and we put ABLE posts out on it regularly. He's on Instagram, but we really ask y'all to like us, help follow us, and help us spread the word. And this young man over here, we all just love. His name is Kirk Garrett Jr. He lives in Lawrence County. He is the IT person for Lawrence County Special Needs Disability Board. He's a great young man, and he was here for Disability Advocacy Day for us. And he is nonverbal, and when we interviewed him, I did it through Facebook Messenger. And it's amazing how fast he can type. But, and he's just such a delightful person. So I always love this when I see Kirk's face here. And that really concludes our presentation. Do y'all have any other questions I can answer? Okay.